Communities, Parks and Leisure Policy Committee. This meeting is open to the public and there are no exempt items of information today. I should introduce myself as well. I'm Councillor Kurtis Crossland and I'm the chair of today's meeting. The meeting will be webcast and recorded and it will be available for people to view on the Council's website. It is also possible that Sheffield Live TV will record and rebroadcast this meeting. Please can I request that mobile phones and other such devices are set to silent as to not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. There are no fire tests planned for today. If there is an emergency evacuation, please take instruction from the Town Hall staff, and the assembly point is Tudor Square outside. Before we begin the formal agenda items today, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the sad passing of Uriah Rennie, a much loved and widely respected figure in Sheffield and the country, to be fair. Uriah was a trailblazer in the world of football. He was the first black referee in the Premier League, officiating over 300 professional matches. But he was also a proud Sheffielder. I think he was originally from Wyburn, but I know he's lived in other areas of the city as well. I was at a community event in my ward in Bayton when a member of the public came up and said, "Oh, Yuri, you used to live next door to my parents." And Yuri knew exactly who he meant, his parents' names, everything about them. And I think that sort of person-first personal connection that Yuri had with everybody just exemplifies the person that he was. And I think that's one of the reasons why he was so good with grassroots and community sports and well-being with his positions at Sheffield City Trust and Everyone Active. He was a man of great dignity, strength and compassion, and I know he will be sorely missed by many colleagues, but also friends within the council and Everyone Active. So on behalf of the Communities, Parks and Leisure Committee, I want to extend our deepest condolences to Uriah's family, friends and colleagues. Thank you. Thank you for that. We will move on to introductions. So as I previously said, I'm Councillor Kurtis Crossland. I'm the chair of this committee. For the benefit of the webcast, would members be able to introduce themselves and officers when we come to your part on the agenda? So if we start to my left.
Yeah, good afternoon. Councillor Alan Hooper, Councillor for the West Ecclesfield Ward.
Councillor Karen McGowan, Burley Ward.
Councillor Tony Downing, member for Mosborough Ward.
Laura Moynahan, Councillor for Manor Castle and Deputy Chair of this committee.
Councillor Nabila Maulana, Councillor for Park and Harbourthorne.
It's Councillor Brian Holmshaw, Brummill and Sharrowvale Ward.
Marieanne Elliot, Green Councillor for Gleadless Valley.
Simon Clement-Jones, Councillor for Bridgeford and Grinnell.
Thank you, everybody. For those keeping score at home, that should mean that we've had no apologies for absence.
Correct.
Excellent, good. So item 2 on the agenda is exclusions of public and press. The meeting is open to the public and there are no agenda items containing any exempt information. Item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members wish to declare an interest in any items on today's agenda? No? Perfect. Thank you, everybody. So item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. This item is to approve the accuracy of the minutes of the Communities, Parks and Leisure Committee held on the 31st of March 2025. These can be found from page 11 of the agenda pack. Are these approved? They look approved to me. Excellent, they are approved. Item 5, public questions and petitions. We did receive 2 questions relating to the remit of this committee. These questions, along with their answers, have been published on the Council's website, and we didn't receive any supplementary questions in time for those. We did receive a petition, but I don't believe the petitioner is here today to present that. So I'm guessing that the submitted petition and the response will be published alongside the minutes of this. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. So we will move quickly on to item 6 then, which is members' questions, and we have not received any questions from members relating to today's meeting, so we can move on to item 7, which is the work programme, and this can be found from page 21 of the agenda pack, and the presenting officer is Joanne.
Thank you, Chair. The main changes to the work programme since the last meeting of the committee is that the performance report that we're going to be hearing today was added to the agenda. The year ahead report, which we were going to be having for this meeting, has been moved to September to allow further discussions to take place with members on the work programme. There was an item about commercial dog walkers in parks, which was due to be heard at this meeting of the committee, and that's been moved to September. Since the papers went to press, we've just had a couple more amendments, which is that the Public Spaces Protection Order review has been added to the agenda for the November meeting, and the approval of the cremation and cemetery services strategy has been added to the September meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Perfect, that's great, thank you. Brian?
Hello, if I can ask a question about the work programme. It's looking very threadbare at the moment, and that's visible to the public. So I've already had questions asked of me, why is there nothing on the work programme? And I have explained that, within the next couple of, to my understanding, within the next couple of weeks, we will be populating that. So I have explained that, and that's gone forward to them. One of the items that I'd like us to address is about the Corporate Opportunities Register. And I wanted us to kind of get that on the agenda, possibly in advance, so it becomes part of our discussions. I'd like that to be a regular feature in future. And the Corporate Opportunities Register was passed by the Council in June 2022 and hasn't been implemented since. Now, to my understanding, is it's meant to go through each of the committees and then goes forward to SNR for agreement or not agreement. So I wonder if we could address that going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you've raised a very good point about the contents of the work programme. As you say, we are having our work programme events where members get to dig into lots of detail, and we get to submit ideas and come up with things with officers that we will work on over the coming year. On the Corporate Opportunities Register, I think I need to familiarise myself with it, to be quite honest. If it's passed by full council, it's definitely something that we need to look at. Would we be able to have a meeting about that following this and figure out how we can work it into the way that we work as a committee?
I mean, I'd be happy to kind of point to the documents that I can remember being one of the people who was behind the document, a few years ago. So I could help point the direction of where it is. It's disappeared a little bit, so I think we need to resurrect it to some extent. So yes, I'm happy to meet. Kurtis, we could include it just on the agenda of one of our meetings going forward to discuss in terms of the work programme, the 3 meetings that we're having.
Do any of the officers want to come in on that? But bringing it to a knowledge briefing sounds really useful, actually. Yeah? Is everybody happy with that idea? Because it could be something that we roll in with our performance reporting as well, couldn't it? But, yeah. Perfect, thank you. Good point. So with all that being said, are we all agreed with the recommendations on page 22 of the... Oh, sorry, I couldn't see your hands. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to raise something. I think, obviously, given what we said, that we need to have further discussions about what goes on the work plan to populate it. There's just one thing that popped to mind, because the playing pitch strategy, which was passed by this committee in 2022, I think, came up at Finance Committee last week, and there was a capital expenditure approval. And I think it was brought up in that meeting that discussions needed to be had with this committee, and it reminded me that we agreed a while ago to review it to make it sort of less prescriptive and more holistic. So I just wondered if we could get that on the work plan, a review of the playing pitch strategy. Thanks.
I'm sure that that's something that we can look at going forward. I need to look at what was agreed as well. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Perfect. So all agreed with recommendations on page 22 of the agenda pack? That sounds agreed to me. Perfect. Thank you. So on to item 8, which is the biological record keeping. This can be found from page 31 of the agenda pack, and we have Ruth to talk us through it. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Ruth Bell, I'm Head of Parks and Countryside. I'm presenting this report on behalf of Nikki Rivers, who's our ecology manager, who pulled the report together and also wrote the policy that's attached to it. I'm not proposing to go through the report line by line, but I have pulled out the key points, if that's okay. So this report requests approval for a Sheffield Biological Record Centre charging and data supply policy, try saying that fast, and an increase in fees charged by the Sheffield Biological Record Centre, which from here on out I'll start calling just the Record Centre, if that's okay, to commercial customers from the 21st of July this year, 2025. The Record Centre is a local environmental record centre held and managed by Sheffield City Council on behalf of both Sheffield City Council and also Barnsley MBC under a contract arrangement. The database holds records from various sources on species observed and identified in both Sheffield and Barnsley, and the changes proposed in the report apply to both the Biological Record Centre services for Sheffield and Barnsley. The records held securely by the Record Centre are used as an evidence base for a number of statutory and non-statutory functions, and there are a number of examples of that throughout the report. The Record Centre, as with other local environmental record centres, delivers a service supplying data for education, research and conservation purposes, as well as a fee-paying service for commercial customers such as environmental consultancies. The fees charged are not for the data itself, but for the reasonable cost of supplying the data, and those fees for this service have not been reviewed since 2011, and therefore increases are needed to cover rising costs. Key points from the new policy and the proposed fees changes that I wanted to pull out are that data services are provided free of charge for non-commercial users, and that again there is a list of examples in the report of that, but it includes things like education and research, and also members of the public with a general interest in records for their local area, and that includes things like friends groups, so that's very relevant to this committee. The exception to those things are if the requests are not standard and they comprise a very large amount of bespoke work. And then a fee-paying service is offered to commercial customers, and that's mainly for developers and their ecological consultants. In accordance with the Environmental Information Regulations and guidance from the Information Commissioner, all income from the data searches is used to support the costs of servicing requests and updating and improving the databases and the data holdings. There is no charge for the data itself. The report sets out clearly the proposed changes to the charging structure, including the fact that, as with other fees and charges across parks and countryside, which are increased annually in line with inflation following approval of that at full council, that we propose that the same thing happen with these fees and charges going forward. A financial review of staff time and other reasonable costs, record centre costs from last year, alongside projected costs and income for this year, has shown that this increase is necessary to help contribute to the reasonable costs of providing the service. So implementing this fee increase will therefore support a balanced budget for the ecology team. So I'll just go through the recommendations in detail. The Communities, Parks and Leisure Policy Committee is recommended to 1. Approve the draft Sheffield Biological Record Centre charging and data supply policy, which is attached to the report as an appendix. 2. Approve the proposed charging structure and fees for the supply of Sheffield Biological Record Centre data, which is set out in the report. And 3. Agree that the new fees will take effect for all new data requests submitted after the 21st of July 2025. Thank you.
Thank you for that. To me, it sounds like a fairly sensible report that brings this up to date, but I'll let other members come in and give opinions. So I've got Tony and with your hand up as well, Marieanne. Does anybody else want to, I guess, struggle spotting people while I'm also trying to take note of what people are saying? Perfect. So if we go to Tony first.
Thank you, Kurtis. Is this something that we've not done before, or is this something that we are trying to increase for this service? I mean, I need to understand if it's something that we're doing already. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. It's something we're already doing. What we haven't done is reviewed the fees in about 14 years. So we're trying to bring the fees into line with the actual costs of delivering the service, but we've been offering the service for a long time, well over a decade.
And sorry, Chair. And does this is this in line with other authorities doing the same thing? Thank you.
Thank you, Marieanne.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing this paper, Ruth. I mean, I think this is an excellent service that's provided to friends of groups, nature groups, and for educational purposes. And actually, the council are lucky to have professional ecologists to do this work. I have heard from friends of groups that requests can take quite a long time. And obviously, you know, I think it's an excellent service, and I'm definitely not critical of the team. Is that a capacity issue, would you say?
I think it probably is, along with an increase in the number of requests that are taking place, for both non-commercial and commercial reasons.
Thanks. And then for commercial users, I mean, I think this is actually really quite interesting in the context of planning. So just to understand what's on offer, can they buy a full BNG assessment, for example?
I believe so. I believe that's set out in the report.
Okay, that's what I thought, because obviously those assessments are now statutory, so I feel like it'd be quite good to see some work on getting these in line with commercial sector prices. I had a little look online, and a lot of the commercial sector don't actually advertise their prices, but those that do start at least £500. And I think that would have the dual benefit that, you know, the developers would have the confidence they'd get the full service at the pre-planning stage from the council. You know, we could then probably factor in a little bit of, you know, how we're going to deal with the enforcement, which is obviously an issue. But then the council gets some revenue from it as well. I was just thinking that, you know, those ecologists are highly skilled. They're offering a professional service. So commercial users should be paying for that expertise, and it should be marketed as such. I mean, I'm happy with the prices as they are, you know, as proposed for this year, but I wondered if some work could be done so the service can bring in some money, and then we can get more planning ecologists, which is obviously going to be a crucial priority when it comes to spatial planning and the local plan and protecting nature and everything. So I just wondered if we could take that forwards, because it's obviously commercial organisations profiting from this, and I just think the council could take opportunities from it as well.
I'm happy to take it away and look at that. Thank you for saying that you're happy with what's proposed in the report. I guess what I would say is I'm wondering whether they are not exactly the same service, because what we have benchmarked against is other local authorities whose pricing structure we're trying to match. So I wonder whether some of the offers from private operators are for something slightly beyond what the Biological Records Centre is proposing to offer here. But I'll happily take it away and look at it. That's the other point. Sorry, yes. We're not able to charge for the data, and it may be that they're able to charge for the data. We're only charging for the time spent gathering the data, and that's a legal requirement.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense because it's obviously the officer time, isn't it? But they, you know, that is professional expertise, and I just wondered if, it could work with planning to sort of, you know, come up with a plan to sort of make that a more, you know, commercially viable offer. Thanks.
Thank you. I think that's a good point. But I seem to remember something in one of the pre-meetings about being there's legal requirements on what we can and can't charge for. But if there's an opportunity there, we should definitely be looking at it seriously, especially as biodiversity net gain becomes an even bigger part of the things that we do as a council.
Just to give you feedback, you were correct there.
Do you want to?
Yes, certainly.
Sorry.
Just to add some clarity to that, we have under the Local Government Act, you can only, in a lot of statutory functions, you can only recover your costs. So you're not, it isn't that you can then add on additional costs as well to that. So that's why I think that's why you've obviously done the work in seeing how much it does actually cost, and then we can then recharge it. But we're not, it's, yeah, we are limited on then becoming a commercial entity.
Yeah, I mean, I do completely understand that. I just don't think we should undervalue the, you know, the professionalism of our ecologists and the work that they do, because that is obviously a professional standard of work that they're completing for the council. But thanks.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm interested in the fees. The point I just wanted to follow on from Marieanne there is I've had experience of what changes happen within planning. So officer time wasn't fully being taken into account within the planning department for the time they provided in meetings and on phone calls to talk through and provide the advice to customers, commercial customers and individual households. So that was altered a few years ago. And benchmarks were taken from the core cities. So we looked at other core cities and what they were charging and worked out a way that Sheffield could then upgrade its charges to commercial operators. So that was the first thing, which is more of a comment. But the question is to do with fee charges. So I noticed that these fees have been altered since 2011, which is a good 14 years ago. So are there any other fees within the department that haven't been altered since that time? Because it seems to me that, you know, that's necessary to be looking at those kind of fees to see whether they're commensurate with what other cities are charging and what's a reasonable rate to be able to charge. So I wonder if that could be investigated, because I'm worried if something's been 14 years in the offing, then there might be others.
I don't believe so. External costs are looked at. That's how this has been picked up as something that needs to be reviewed. We do review our fees within Parks and Countryside annually to increase them by inflation, or more if it's felt to be necessary because they've not been looked at, or if other people have massively increased their fees for whatever reason. So I don't believe that's the case, but we will continue to review all of our charges and make sure that we are covering our costs where we are permitted to do so.
Thanks, Chair. If I could just add as well, so the Council has a position now where all fees and charges, as Ruth says, are increased annually. And that's an approach that this committee for the last couple of years has taken as well. I think the difference here is this is about issuing data, and that's something that's fallen, you know, by the wayside over the years, which is why it's been necessary to bring a standalone report about the charges for this data. All of the fees and charges are part of the annual budget report that the Council signs off each year, and this will fall within that in coming years as well. So I think the answer to your question is no, but we will double check.
Yeah. Good point. I've seen Karen indicate, and then unless anybody waves at me, we'll draw this to a close. So Karen?
Yeah, it's just made me think of what Marieanne was saying, and I just wanted some clarity really about charging more, because Marieanne was saying that there's delays, and that could be because of capacity. So I just wanted clarification. I know you can't make a profit, but can you recruit more staff to deal with the capacity? I just wanted that clarification. So can you charge more to recruit more staff to deal with the workload?
The quick answer is no, because it costs the same amount to do the data search, whether you've got 10 staff or 100. If you're doing a lot more data searches, it might be able to cover additional staff, but I don't believe that that's the case here. To be clear, we do have a small ecology team, and we need to increase the size of that ecology team, but these fees are not going to be a way to do that.
Thank you. Some good questions there. So the report contains recommendations for approval on page 32 of the agenda pack. Are we all agreed with those recommendations? Let's see, it was unanimous. Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ruth, and thank you to Nikki as well, who isn't here today, but put a lot of work into the report. So item 9, which is the performance report. This can be found from page 49 of the agenda pack, and Lisa and Tom are going to present this item. So over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself previously. I'm Lisa Firth. I'm the Director of Parks, Leisure and Libraries, and I'll be handing over to my colleague, Tom, shortly. So the report, which again I don't intend to go through in detail, but just draw your attention to a few points. So it presents an overview of the operational performance for Parks, Leisure and Libraries, which is my areas of responsibility, and for communities, which is Tom's areas of responsibilities for this year. It outlines a framework for monitoring and reporting on key performance indicators, and the intention of which is to provide the committee with an opportunity to review the performance and offer feedback on the approach to service delivery. And then moving down to the proposal in the report at section 2. So 2.1 sets out that the report summarises the performance information for this committee for last year, and sets out what the committee can expect in terms of performance reporting for the coming year, for the 2025-26 year. It highlights areas to note, providing explanations where possible, and the intention of which is to facilitate the committee in monitoring performance on a range of services that fall within your remit. And regular performance monitoring will also strengthen the committee's understanding of service delivery. The proposal is to present a quarterly report where scheduling allows. The quarterly report will cover the previous 3 months' performance, which will enable timely and consistent monitoring, but because of the scheduling of the committee dates, that is not always going to be possible to present you with a full quarter's report. We will do our best to do that. We also intend to bring an annual report, which will be a comprehensive summary, and that report will be presented to you for discussion in March of each year. The proposal is also to split out service areas. So as you're aware, both myself and Tom cover very different areas of service delivery, and the remit of this committee is very diverse. We therefore intend to present reports that cover parks, leisure, libraries and bereavement services, a further report around communities information, and then a further report again around youth services. And we can bring those in a schedule to suit the committee. Further in section 2 of the report, we set out some of the points to note for parks, leisure and libraries in terms of what we will bring to you each quarter, and that will largely be a summary of contract performance for the Everyone Active Leisure contract, and until 2026 also the Places Leisure contract. That's because that is a relatively easy contract to pull quarterly data from. And then on an annual basis we will bring you customer satisfaction reports for each of my service areas, which is Parks and Countryside, Bereavement and Coronial Services. We will also include the percentage of public open space sites in Sheffield that are managed to the Sheffield standard, the improvement in local biodiversity, including the local sites where positive conservation management has been achieved, the number of trees that we've planted by our community forestry teams, the number of green flag quality awards that have been accredited to parks and green spaces that are in the council stewardship, summary of performance for Everyone Active and Places Leisure, progress against the recommendations of the Sheffield Race Equality Commission that are relevant to the services that we provide, the number of physical visits to libraries, electronic loans from the e-library and usage of public computers in libraries and archives. And I'll hand you over to Tom to take you through the communities.
Thanks, Lisa. So, hi everyone, I'm Tom Smith, I'm Director of Customer Experience and Communities. I think, as Lisa has said, when you look at the remit of this committee and you look at the list that's at the top of this report, it's an incredibly diverse portfolio of different areas and outcomes, I guess, for the city. And genuinely, it's actually quite a difficult thing to performance report on with numbers a lot of the time in this space. So if you just look at the community stuff in my area, for example, community development is very much more actually about the action we're taking in the relationships we have in communities than it is necessarily about some of the numbers. Similarly with things like cohesion and migration and some of the prevention work as well. So, as Lisa said, we've reflected on that outside of this meeting. We've put this framework together, which is a mixture of quantitative numbers, mainly, frankly, at the moment in Lisa's area, and I'll come on to my area in a sec, but also some regular qualitative reports about activity, talking about the sorts of things we're doing in communities and hopefully with the difference we're making through those things. So in my area in particular, we're still developing a lot of the community's measurement. We will be seeking, though, as we go forward, to commit to more regular reporting around thematic areas. So in particular, we're aware that crime and disorder is a particular gap at the moment in this committee, and we need to start bringing forward some numbers in that space. We're currently working with South Yorkshire Police to get something robust in place in there. The reporting schedule on that is to be confirmed, mainly because you'll probably know bringing crime statistics every quarter is slightly nonsensical, actually, because crime simply doesn't change that much in terms of time. And it changes seasonally as well, so you've got to be quite careful about when you report those figures. We'll be looking at our first 6-monthly review of the Public Spaces Protection Order. As we said, I think it says in this report October, but that's now scheduled for November. And we're developing a report around antisocial behaviour as well, which we know is something that's right up there in terms of the priority of elected members and the public. And we want to make sure we can start reporting through the activity and some of the numbers on that as well. And then we will also be looking at reporting something through around our cost of living and household support fund work as well in particular, which I don't think we've seen consistently in this committee, but really keen to bring that forward as well. And then similarly, as Lisa said, we will be reporting some customer related information as well going forward on that. In addition to that, we will have a number of annual reports, and these are almost the qualitative end of things really, where we haven't necessarily got lots and lots of numbers. This committee has community development within its remit, and clearly linked to that is our local area committees. Local area committees are not in the remit of this committee. However, one of our intents is to bring an annual report of local area committee activity as it relates to community development, so that this committee gets a really good idea of the work that's taking place within communities and an opportunity to scrutinise that effectively. Similarly with our shared prosperity funded activities. And then we will also be seeking to bring a report around City of Sanctuary and Asylum to this committee as well every year, again to set out the work that's taking place in that space. So a little bit of a mixture of quantitative and qualitative as we go forward.
Perfect, thank you. I'm taking note of everybody who wants to speak. I think it's worth saying as well that this is the start of the performance reporting. For lots of what's in here, we don't yet know what good looks like as well. We need to see how this progresses. And there's also, I think it's worth saying that we can only measure what we can measure. I'm going to pick on libraries as a bit of an example, actually, because while we can look at how good our libraries are operating, what's also important for us to figure out is people who are not currently using libraries and why not. And so we can only measure what we have in our control. There will be lots more information that as a committee and as services that sit under this committee that we will be looking at to try and improve our services as we go forward. So the first hand that I saw was Simon, and then we'll go over to Karen and Laura.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I was looking at the session of the sections 2.2 and 2.3 on pages 53, and I thought it was interesting in terms of the difference between the two from Parks and Leisure and I don't know, it's 2.3 and 2.4, is it? 2.32, sorry. So you've got Parks and Leisure and you've got the kind of everyone active session. And I noticed that in the everyone active session, it's got performance against grant-funded projects. I'm glad that we're holding a private company to their performance on that. Why isn't something along those lines in terms of performance of council against grant-funded projects within the thing? I'm not quite finished. So that's that question. Also, in terms of the leisure contract, I'm assuming that they're doing a customer satisfaction report. So obviously we'd like to see the results of that in this. And if they're not doing a customer satisfaction report, obviously we'd want to know the reason why. Yeah, just in terms of complaints received, I noticed that's not in the Parks, Leisure and Libraries annually, but it is in the places. Or have I read this wrong? Thank you.
Okay. You might not have, you might have read it wrong, but I might have not written it clearly enough. So it could be either. But the so at 2.3.1, so the Parks, Leisure and Libraries, which is the kind of accumulation of my services, it does set out that everyone active contract performance will be monitored, and then it's places leisure contract, and then the performance against grant-funded projects is against all of the grant-funded projects. So, yeah, does that make sense? Yeah, so such as libraries or the Species Survival Fund, and then we will bring a quarterly report, which is the complaints received and the responses performance. Okay, and I will pick up the point on the everyone active customer satisfaction and add that in. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Perfect, thank you. Did I also see that Marieanne and Brian, did you wave as well? I'll add you to the list, so I'll try and balance it out a bit on different sides. So if we go to Laura next. Microphone, sorry.
Thank you. I always forget to do that. I'm a bit surprised that on Parks, Leisure and Everyone Active contract and Places Leisure, that we don't look at ethnicity. It says gender breakdown and age breakdown. It'd be really useful to get information on ethnicity to see why certain groups are probably underrepresented or not using it, and whether they need to do separate sessions for women in particular. So that's just a point, a question there that'd be really useful. And this is for you really, Tom. I think we've got voluntary sector within the communities portfolio, and I wonder if there's a possibility of us doing, I know we're developing the community strategy, but I don't know if that'll pick it up, the health of the voluntary and community sector, because we rely on that sector to deliver a range of services, even linked to the PSPO, for example. We're dependent on working with the sector. And I wonder if there's something about capturing the health of the sector and how that's changing, or what challenges there might be. Thank you. But I really welcome this. It's really useful to have something that we can monitor performance against. And I particularly like not just quantitative, it is qualitative, because that's really important. It's not just about numbers. Don't die, Lisa. Not till you finish your report. So it is useful to capture the qualitative stuff as well as the quantitative. Thank you.
And I will add in the ethnicity as well. So the thing that I didn't say in the introduction, which I should have said actually and made really clear, is this is a proposal and it's iterative. So as we move through as a committee and we bring these reports, then we can absolutely add in, take things out as they are useful or not.
And then just briefly on the voluntary sector health question, I think that's a really good suggestion. I guess as we move through the community strategy work, one of the pieces of work that's clearly coming out as a first priority is the work on the council's relationship with the voluntary communities, faith and social enterprise sector into the future, and some of our commission and other approaches. And it feels like a piece of work on the health of the sector would be really good actually to inform that piece of it, wouldn't it? So we'll look at something in that space. Councillor Moynahan, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. I'll go across the chamber to Marieanne.
Thank you. Just want to reiterate that point that Laura made. Yeah, to add ethnicity, please. That would be really, really helpful. And then we can get some more analysis of underrepresented groups and their usage. Because, of course, when Everyone Active came in, this was something that we did talk about. It was really one of our primary objectives. So we can see where some work's needed, maybe some different groups or more community work. I am really pleased that we've put in the monitoring of the Everyone Active because, yeah, I am still unfortunately receiving emails about issues with the service provided by them due to staffing issues, etc. Just wanted to ask about something in the park section at 232. So we're going to get reports on positive conservation management, which I think is a really, really good step forwards and something that the Green Spaces Group will probably be really, really pleased with. Can we add on, because this should be quite easy to quantify, reports on glyphosate use in parks and green spaces, if possible on housing land as well, because I know that parks do that work and that could be passed on to Housing Committee, so just wondered if that's possible.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah. So for those watching at home, Lisa Firth is nodding her head. Perfect, thank you. Karen?
Yeah, thank you. I'll go to Tom first. It's about antisocial behaviour, and it does worry me because we have antisocial behaviour in housing and they're measuring it in one way and looking at it in there and considering it there, and then we have antisocial behaviour in community, and it just feels like to people out there there's antisocial behaviour, and it depends on which bit you're looking at to what results you get out. And it worried me a bit, not worried me so much, but in housing when they just showed it by ward, and then I was trying to find a breakdown of where is this happening in the ward? Is it all in one area? Is it, and things like that. So I think there's something there that we need to look out for in future about not just saying it's happening in this, but is it a certain aspect of it or is it spread? Then there's something about value added and prevention, because I think that's when we're looking at communities, sorry Lisa, over to you, well both of you, sorry, but when we're looking at prevention and value added, how we measure that, because it's really difficult to measure, I think I've raised it before about prevention, it's really important, but it has knock-on effects, doesn't it, that you might not need other support elsewhere. But also our volunteer organisations and what they offer and how they prevent people falling into needing more serious help, which goes on to what Laura was saying really. We've got ageing volunteers and what are the implications out there? I've just had a lunch club close because the volunteers were so elderly and they couldn't get anybody to take it over. And the time commitment that's involved and the paperwork, and sometimes said it's not the day of the lunch club that's the problem, it's all the paperwork behind the scenes that they have to do. And some people haven't come from backgrounds that do this kind of role. So it's how do we sustain that and for the future, so it goes back to what Laura was saying. Thank you.
So I think it's a really good question on the ASB work. So we do have one ASB policy for the council which cuts across both services into communities and housing. So there should be a degree of consistency of approach. As with anything where things are done in two different bits of the council, there is always a bit of potential for a bit of inconsistency. The one place where there is some built-in inconsistency though is obviously if you're in housing we have powers if you live in one of our properties that we don't necessarily have if you don't. So in terms of the actual enforcement end of things, there is a difference often because of tenure. But the actual policy should be the same. And one of the pieces of work I've already kicked off with my team and into housing is how we pull together a more rounded picture of ASB across the piece. Because we are aware that you potentially get a slightly different picture depending if you ask us or if you ask housing or frankly if you ask the police or some other organisation. So a lot of the work we're doing in community safety, especially at the moment on data, the reason it takes a long time to develop and get it into this committee, to be honest, is that we don't just want to present, just the police's position, for example. we want to present that rounded position across the partnership, but we are working on that. So thank you for that. And then in terms of how you measure, work to deal with upstream issues, work to prevent things happening, it is really challenging. That's why we want to bring the qualitative stuff in and tell the stories actually of some of the work, especially in the voluntary sector. I was sat here in the Wellbeing Board last week, and we had two guys who came to talk about the men's group they have and the work they're doing on mental health and what that's done in terms of meaning that individual people have not then had to access services. And those stories help, I think, to tell the tale about how it works. But we can do work around data as well. So one of the things we're thinking about a lot is the demand management end as well. So if we get better community-based services, what does that do in terms of the numbers that are actually coming in through our front door ultimately? So we're going to try to measure some of that, but it is challenging.
Right, thank you. And finally, we have Brian.
All right, thank you, Chair. I was going to mention this, but it's what Tom's just said. So I just want to follow on from this, and then my proper question, my main question. So you mentioned about ASB and being able to monitor that. A thought is that there are spikes in ASB in parks. I find different times of the year and going from different audiences, different groups of people. So, and that needs picking up. And that's, so it depends when you do the monitoring. That's just a general point. My main question is to do with 2.4.2, which is probably you, Lisa. And it relates to 2.4.3, which is the Green Flag Quality Awards. Now, Green Flag, I understand very, very clearly. It's a nationally accepted benchmark for parks and green spaces. What I'm a little bit concerned about is the Sheffield standard, which is a Sheffield-based standard. And the bit I'm bothered about is that it says 2/3 of the way down in 2.4.2, a site may need signage, seating, bins, dog bins, and so on. So how is that determined then? When you have your standard, are all these included? Are some of them included? How does something reach a Sheffield standard? Because it's very clear with Green Flag where you're going to, what the aim is. And we've got 18, which is fantastic. Really, it's an improvement over the last few years. But it's the may need that bothers me a little. How are you going to be able to monitor that?
Thank you. The Sheffield standard is it's a watered down version of the Green Flag assessment, because we recognise that not all of the sites that we manage and maintain can be green flags. So it's a watered down version of that, and it's assessment that the team have put in place to be able to actually say this site meets a certain standard. But within the categorisation of green and open spaces, there are woodlands, there are cemeteries, there are parks, there are local parks, district parks, different sorts of parks. So it will be determined by the type of green space as to whether or not those things are needed. So you might have a woodland, for instance, that doesn't require signage, but you might have a local park that does require signage. You might have a local woodland that doesn't require a litter bin. You might have a park that does. So if it's a local park, and again I'll look at Ruth just to get some affirmation of what I'm saying here. If it's a local park, then we would expect signage, clear sight lines, safety, accessibility, bins, etc. If it's a woodland, then it will be less imperative, but it still needs to be safe and accessible. Does that help?
I could just follow up. Who would determine that? Who goes round and checks on it and sets the standard? Who sets the standard?
That's our Parks and Countryside Service, and it is determined by experience and expertise, but it's also determined by feedback as well as things develop over the years. So if touching on the antisocial behaviour point, if we are receiving feedback from yourselves as councillors, from members of the public, that a site is experiencing particular issues around, say, dog fouling or antisocial behaviour, then it might be that we look at how we can improve the site. I think the petition that we received to Council today was about a green space that was suffering from antisocial behaviour and overgrown greenery. That needs to be looked at, and our team are going to go out and look at that site. So it is determined by the service, but it's also determined by the feedback that the service receives as well.
Thank you. I seem to remember seeing something when I first joined the committee of like a list of the requirements for a Sheffield standard. It might be useful just sending that out to committee members so we can all see it, and yeah.
I will do that, yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? Perfect. So the report contains recommendations for approval on page 51. Are we all agreed with those recommendations? We are all agreed. Excellent. Perfect. Well, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us in this hot room. Have a safe journey home if you're going home, or find a cold place if you've got group meetings tonight. Thank you, everybody.